monthly chat series. My name's Amy Keenan. I am your host. I'm the one you see every second Tuesday of the month at 4 p.m. Eastern Time here in Zoom, LinkedIn Live, and then even on YouTube. So wherever you're watching, welcome to this monthly chat series. So excited that you're here, and I'm so excited for my guests today. I actually have two Patricks. So we have Patrick from k-ecommerce and Patrick from LBMC, who'll be chatting with us today about the B2B e-commerce challenges and how we can solve them. So very excited to have you both here. Welcome.
Hi, thanks for having us.
Sure. Are we ready to go with our questions? We have some great topics to talk about today. And since we only have 20 minutes, we like to be able to get in as much content as we can in this 20 minutes for you. This is being recorded, and I will be sending out the recording email as well, so stay tuned for that. But let's get started with our questions. So both of you can chime in on this wonderful question. Where to start with e-commerce? What's the speed to market?
So, when we're talking about e-commerce, I mean, there's so many different strategies. I mean, you mentioned speed to market, where to start. I think that identifying the needs is probably, from my opinion, the best place to start, right? And working with a partner or a team of individuals who gets to know your business, obviously works with you to know your business, and can tackle those topics and those needs head on. I would also say that when it comes to speed to market specifically, identifying what the needs are and what the importance is up front is probably the best way to have a project that goes live at the time that it was set. Because we've all been there if we've done certain projects where you kind of live in this change request world where you're discovering new things throughout. And that's what we try and avoid here is making sure that you know what the needs are going front and working with the professionals and the individuals who see this every day to make it happen.
Yeah. And I also think it's important to talk about how you're going to sell, right? So not just what you're going to sell, but how you're going to sell it within the space. Having a good plan around that e-commerce release strategy is super important. Otherwise, you're just going to try to iterate through implementation and discovery, and then you're never going to actually deploy. So to mirror what Patrick had said, a big thing is working with trusted partners within the space who've done this a lot of times to really understand not just an ad hoc jump into e-commerce, but a really strategic plan to do that as a cohesive project moving forward throughout the course of your business life cycle.
That's it. I think maybe just add to that too, where to start is making sure that we have a use case, one that's viable, one that works, one that will make the business grow and achieve the next level. And that can come in many different forms of e-commerce, right? E-commerce is a pretty broad category that has many different options and strategies. So making sure that the right strategy aligns for where your business is right now and obviously establishing the vision for where we want to go moving forward.
Yes, totally agree with you on all of that. So when it comes to B2B relationships, which we all know are very personal, what are some of the strategies that can help maintain and enhance that personalized experience when now they're going to this online, ordering online, doing everything online? More of a hands-off approach sometimes in that area.
Sure.
Go ahead, Patrick. Go ahead, please.
Oh yeah. I was going to say, I utilize the premise of B2B commerce to maximize my time. As a business manager, a lot of my time can be tied up in just keeping the business running well. Where submitting requests or even orders online frees me up to be able to run the business and focus those conversations that I have with partners or providers within the space to be more interactive and meaningful from like an interpersonal perspective, more than just doing business as usual.
Yeah, I think that with my experience in B2B relationships, it's I'll say it's very different than what you would typically find with consumer retail shopping that we're all used to and that we all know. B2B businesses often, depending the industry you're in, will know what they want to buy from you. Right? They want to be quick and efficient when ordering happens. They want to be able to maybe, in many cases, order or restock their shelves at 9 p.m. on a Saturday or a Sunday because they're also wearing 6 other hats and they're doing a whole bunch of work during their 9 to 5, right? So with this idea, that's where e-commerce really comes into play. And with that, I think it's important specifically, and if you're in the business to business space, to make sure that the e-commerce provider that you decide to choose or move forward with can provide those business to business feature sets that you might look for, right? I mean, I can speak all day about this, but one example would be the notion that in B2B business, customers are all very different. They have their own personalized view of things. They have their own pricing that might have been set up or negotiated. They have their own payment terms, their own pricing. They have, of course, in some cases, even products that they are allowed to buy that nobody else is allowed to buy. So with all these types of options that can vary from customer to customer, it's important to make sure that your e-commerce platform can also follow that structure. Otherwise, you're offering, one price, one set of items to everybody, and that doesn't really work because they're going to end up calling you and saying, "Hey, this is not the price that I normally get from you." So it's that kind of component that's important to consider when looking specifically for a business-to-business e-commerce platform.
Yeah.
So I feel like it has to be a little more customized and customer specific and, having it a little bit more streamlined for them. And of course, making it easy for them too.
I mean, we're not buying widgets at the end of the day. And even if we are, we're doing such B2B where, I'm not doing this for personal use. Usually it's professional services or continued efforts around solutions that are within the space where in a lot of cases, I might actually be doing this on behalf of another party and I need to be able to do it quickly.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Or it might be midnight at a conference or, working from the road. Or, I think there was an example where I was flying and was able to submit an order because I get on the website on the plane.
Yeah. 24/7 access is what people want too.
Right.
Yep.
And when we kind of talk about this, I mean, it's good and well to offer all these options and these personalized, sets of data, we'll call them, or personalized pieces of information that you're showing to these individuals. But then the question often comes up, how am I managing all of this data? Where is it all coming from? And that's where, in an ideal situation, you're managing that all in one place. Typically, we would find it be in a place like an ERP, right, where that's the source of your business's data. That's really where you run your business. And then from there, an e-commerce platform might be able to take the components that it needs and really be able to specify who sees what or who gets what. So managing that data is also a huge component to this as well.
And I would, mirror that statement, but also from a system administration perspective, single source of truth is paramount, right? Not just for accuracy, but consistency. As a service provider, I don't want to have to maintain data into separate systems. I would rather have things that communicate well together and have a single source of truth that processes information in such a way that it's, accessible on both ends, both from the provider and from the customer.
Exactly. And that leads to our next question. So B2B companies often rely on this various technology stacks, such as ERP, CRM, inventory management systems, which are already in place. So integrating these with an e-commerce platform could maybe be complex and challenging. So how can these B2B companies effectively manage this integration to ensure a seamless and unified customer experience?
Good question. I think that, we can talk ad nauseum about the pros and cons of having, let's say, an integrated versus an unintegrated system. Many of the listeners might realize that if they have an e-commerce platform today and it's not connected to, an ERP or some sort of accounting system, they'll experience very quickly the problems that occur, primarily manual entry that has to happen, right? This idea where new orders are coming in, and that's great from your e-commerce channel, but now they don't exist anywhere else. So I have to either pay somebody or do it myself, take the time to export those orders and manually type them in or import them into another system such as an ERP.
Yeah.
Human error comes into play here, of course, where I might be typing it wrong, not checking it through. So there are lots of things that happen from an unintegrated standpoint.
Yeah, and if you're going to think about it from an end user's perspective, there's an operational expense in data management
Oh yeah.
that not only boils down to just consistency and continuity, but there's a cost to doing this well or doing it poorly, right? So unfortunately, if your data becomes disparagingly separate between an e-commerce platform, a CRM, an ERP, whatever system, if it becomes disparagingly different from one another, you're going to have operational overhead to either maintain it or to fix it when there's downstream issues, either through credits and client retention or the overhead of staffing to be able to maintain it. If you start off the premise with the intent of a unified system data architecture, you're going to save dividends throughout the course of the life cycle of any kind of technology stack you're utilizing.
And what Patrick is highlighting there, I think, going back to one of the first things we talked about is working with a trusted partner or advisor that knows this, right? Nobody expects business owners or organizations to be IT experts also, and that's where we can rely on people in the industry to point them in the right direction to make sure that you don't have these siloed systems or these multiple databases that aren't communicating together.
Yeah,
and that's where
go ahead.
I was just going to say that's where the partner LBMC comes in,
Yeah.
and the ISV k-ecommerce, where they work together to help the customer obviously get up and running, make sure everything's working, making sure these systems are integrated, and helping them through that process. So
yeah, I think that obviously LBMC and k-ecommerce have worked together many times, and I think this in general is a good example of two trusted organizations who know what they do and do it well, if I might say. And with that, you get all the benefits uh, of knowing or making sure that works for your business because people want to work with people they trust.
Yeah, and I think we're talking a lot about like data silos, but I think Patrick, that alludes to another really good point, which is you need to operate within a space with organizations that work well together. Very rarely within the space you're going to find a one-stop shop for every solution. You definitely want to make sure that as you operate within any space, but particularly within the e-commerce platforms, and then any kind of solution that you provide, that all of your parties are actually going to be able to be cohesive and work together well before you kind of jump in there and start adding more people to the mix. And I think, obviously the relationship between two individuals or even two organizations is paramount to that success. And the cohesiveness, not just between those two parties, but as a group with the customer included. So.
Absolutely.
yeah.
I mean, the last thing I'd say there is, I mean, Patrick pretty much said it. You can have, there are so many approaches. Having an organization that, as he said, was kind of like a one-stop shop that includes the integration to the ERP, that includes the e-commerce platform, that includes many different elements to help have an online store up and running without having to worry about having multiple vendors all communicate together, can go a long way in the sense that you have one person that you need to speak to manage all of it.
Exactly. Yeah. So moving on to B2B buyers needing more ways to pay, right? So how are we helping them? What are the variety of methods that are essential to helping meet the diverse needs of our B2B buyers today?
When you talk about payments in the space, there are the heavy hitters. I would say for a long time, just on account terms was the one, right? Your net 30s and your net 45s of the world, where essentially people order and then you send them a bill at the end of the month that they will pay. A different department might pay or so on. That's always been one of the biggest assets in the business to business space. The other aspects, of course, you're going to be talking about credit card, which is more and more popular every day. And I would argue probably one of the most popular ways now, even beating on account in the B2B space. And then you have the ACH type of transaction, so bank transfers. Right? Those are the three big ones. normally when it comes to the decision between accepting credit card or ACH, that comes down to the ticket size of what you're ordering or what's being purchased, right? Because normally credit cards will have a percentage fee associated to it, whereas something like a bank transfer would have a flat fee. So after a certain dollar amount, it would be beneficial to use a flat rate.
Yeah.
So those are probably the three heavy hitters, I would say. And yeah.
Yeah. I mean, obviously on the ERP side, we see maybe a few more. There are still people out there that write paper checks. We're doing everything we can to maybe modernize that premise, but I would say an industry norm is moving more towards ACH. There is the occasional cash transaction, but those are diminishing, thankfully. But I think, another portion of that too is, as you mentioned, Patrick, the discussion around fees. I'll advocate a little bit from the ERP side. Not only just net terms, but there might be discounts on net terms, the maintenance of credit management. And then, processing fees, not only throughout that, but also credit card processing fees on large transactions, depending on the provider, right? The financial provider, not just the size of the transaction, but who is actually doing the processing. So, I think it's actually really important also from a client's perspective to have a cohesive premise around payments, because not everything is going to go through e-commerce in most cases. So as you have this discussion, you need to have a little bit of agility. So multiple payment options around each account. But it also needs to be streamlined and accurate across each of the systems.
So it's such a good point, because I mean, by no stretch of the imagination would I say that e-commerce would be the only sales channel that companies would operate through, right? People will still call in sales reps, and we still want them to, because that's important. People will still, show up at the counter or do whatever they have. So those channels do remain. But kind of like Patrick's saying, the idea of having them all, once again, using the same processor or using the same payment methods are kind of crucial in that they offer a seamless transition for everybody, that they know they can show up, they can buy online, and it's all coming to the same thing. With that, I would say that it is incredibly important these days to be PCI compliant. And so with that, I would say any platform out there that you would look for needs to be at minimum PCI compliant, or the platform itself should be PCI level 1 or certified, with which obviously the k-ecommerce platform is level 1 certified. And then we can talk a lot about compliance, but I would say more and more these days, I still see it all the time, where a business would call me over the phone and ask me for a payment, and I'd have to dictate my credit card number over the phone. Though that might be a more secure way than actually writing it down somewhere, that is quickly becoming something that is not secure in the slightest. And so, looking for an e-commerce platform that not only offers the ability to make sales orders and make payments online, but also pay your bills after the fact, particularly in a B2B context where I have my net 30, my net 60, is crucially important as well, right? So we're really certifying or making sure that everything is happening in a secure way.
It also consolidates effort from a consumer's end, even at a B2B level. Within the organization here, we could have anyone from 1 to 30 people in a given day submitting requests to the same vendor, depending on what it is, right? We all need the ability to be able to make sure that our bills are paid, so that we can continue to do business as we need to. But it also means that we don't have to necessarily individually maintain a payment method or process. We can just do business as we need to with our own internal constraints, and then rely on the vendor to be able to help us facilitate that.
Yep. All right, we're already on our last question, if you can believe that. 20 minutes do fly by. So there are so many options out there. What are the differences between having a multi-vendor setup versus an all-in-one solution?
And I think we touched on this a little bit earlier, but I think there are merits to both. We usually operate within a space where we leverage subject matter experts. Sometimes that means that you need more than one provider or more than one vendor. Other times, throughout the course of doing business, you start to nurture relationships with individuals or with organizations that you find that can do a lot in a lot of spaces. Um,
Yeah.
my own personal perspective is I would rather make one phone call or send one email than five to resolve an issue. Or speak to one person rather than having to pull five different schedules together for a Teams call or a Zoom call. That's personal preference. But at the same time, again, cohesive workflows within organizations, but across vendors is paramount. You need to make sure before you make any kind of decisions around e-commerce that you're discussing not just the e-commerce but every aspect of that organizationally and with each other, like within the vendor groups, to make sure that they can facilitate the needs of another group or that you can actually communicate across organizationally. Something as simple as a time zone might be a really big deal.
Exactly. One throat to choke, right?
Yeah. The famous expression.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I definitely agree in that putting all your eggs, like having a single vendor to do everything under the sun, would be maybe the dream. But likely that's not always the case, especially with the complexities of each and every business. We're going to have to utilize different tools. You'll end up using multiple vendors for your overall business to get everything working. Um, but knowing where the lines might be in terms of using multiple vendors or using one piece that might cover a whole range of things is very important. And that's, quite transparently where we see ourselves in the sense of on the business to business integrated e-commerce space. Um, you can count on one company to have an all-in-one solution that includes, as we said, the platform, the front end platform that has, your business to business shopping features, the integration into the ERP, the hosting, support, maintenance, future upgrades, and all that side of it. And obviously having experts on board that know B2B business in general. So that's where I would say it's important to make sure those differences remain.
And you mentioned something that actually I think is, well, bears saying, which is, we find ourselves more and more in a SaaS environment, right?
Mm-hmm.
SaaS means that, in a lot of ways, your environment is going to update on a regular cadence. You definitely want to have a cohesive relationship between systems and vendors in that space to ensure that you are ready for those updates. They're going to happen. And if you're not ready for them, they can sneak up on you and be very detrimental to your business should they have a negative impact. I would say working with vendors that are very aware of the space that you work within, this technology stack that you're utilizing, and the implications of things like SaaS that might impact your business and the relative systems that you utilize.
It's so important what you're mentioning because I've seen it firsthand. I've spoken to organizations who have come to us, and one of the reasons is quite honestly, exactly that idea where they say piecemeal or had a multi-vendor setup, meaning that they used many different organizations to put an e-commerce platform together. And what ends up happening is, one gets updated and now all the rest don't work with that new update, or a different one gets updated and they decided, what, we're not going to make a version that supports this because we don't need to at this time, or what have you. So all these situations, the more links that you have, you might gain more features and more functionality, but there are more places that it can break, and there are also more places where you need to facilitate communication between the different parties. So if you have one organization for bits and pieces of it that internally can make sure all of it functions, and obviously, as we said, that knows when these updates are happening and can work in accordance with any other software to make sure it happens, that really does go a long way and avoids a lot of the horror stories that I've heard over the years.
Yeah, a lot of headaches and frustrations. And I feel like we could have a whole monthly chat just on this topic alone. So, well,
Yeah.
thank you Thank you so much. I want to just share my screen and thank the wonderful presenters we had today. And I'm so excited that you guys were able to join me. Where did my chat go? Patrick from K-ecommerce and Patrick from LBMC. So thank you very much for being part of What's the Buzz. And thank you everyone who joined us either from Zoom, LinkedIn, or YouTube. We truly do appreciate it. And if you have any e-commerce questions, feel free to reach out to me or who chatted with me today. And again, we'll be sending out the recording email. So stay tuned for that. And we are, yeah. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Patrick and
Thank you so much.
Patrick.
Yeah.
Have a great
Thank you.
day.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.